Valence Keep underwater. New map shows Northrend shattered. We know that the new map of Northrend and the revamp of Northrend is coming. This is not a secret. Blizzard's already talked about it. And the recent changes to the upper half of Eastern Kingdoms with Silver Moon and all the other zones below it has been great. I think the WoW community loves it. I think I've been really good with it. I've enjoyed it a lot. I think the revamp of it was nice because it wasn't Cataclysm style. It wasn't game breaking. It didn't change the zones so much that they're unrecognizable, even though honestly some of the zones now are completely different, but it still feels real, still feels right, and it's really a nice little revamp on everything that was in those zones previously. Now Northrend, I'm sensitive to it a bit. I'm not going to lie, if they completely break up Grizzly Hills or do something weird with the zones, I don't know if I'll be happy with it. But let's see here what some of the hints that Blizzard is planning on doing with Northrend look like from Thorin.
Remember the big talk about how Northrend is going to get shattered in the last Titan? It will be changed. Even the devs themselves foreshadowed that Northrend we're soon going to go to will be different than the one from Vrat. Well, to go along with that, a really suspicious map was just data-mined in midnight, showing a bunch of
we got a new map.
assets, specifically Alliance Rat Lich King assets, with some speculating that this could potentially be Valiant's Keep. Seeing that Valiant's Keep is literally on the shore itself, it could be possible that it is going to end up underwater. New hints say Azeroth awakens in Northrend, Titans will definitely return, and it will not be pretty. Northrend will feel the consequences, but the real question is, to what extent? If you think classic, especially hardcore, there is the perfect survival guide with rested XP.
Ooh, look at that. Yeah, to what extent exactly? I feel like you can go too far with the revamp. We're in an old zone where we have a lot of memories, it just doesn't feel like that zone anymore. And that was the problem with Cataclysm. It wrecked a lot of old zones. So we'll see how far Blizzard goes with this revamp.
If you use my link below, you will get 10% off your order immediately. So check out Rested XP.
Check it out, boys. Check it out.
I don't know how many of you remember the map from about a year back that was leaked on the forums of like a changed Northrend that had like the writing of Chris Madsen on it, and it was seen as mostly fake, but at the same time there was a little bit of legitimacy to it, as it does actually make some sense, even though it is kind of outlandish. So the reason people have been talking about it is because at the start of this year there was actually a video interview of multiple Blizzard developers that talked about how rebuilding Northrend is specifically a challenge. They told us that it will not just be like a copy of Wrath, like an updated version, and that they will show us how the world has changed over time and that we will see transformed areas.
They definitely can just go with time itself passing, right? How long has it been since we were in Northrend? I mean, proper Northrend. When did Wrath of the Lich King come out? I'm just talking about like real life release date. Wrath of the Lich King release date. When was it? November 13th, 2008. Wow, damn, was it that long ago? So 08, Cataclysm was 2010. Okay, so that makes the math easy, 16 years. So it was 16 years looking back at Wrath of the Lich King. It's been 16 years since it passed. You could say 20 years because Shadowlands also has a time skip, supposedly after, where some time passed before the next expansion started. So 20 years of being gone from that continent, a lot could have changed. That's the thing. No, I was using Wikipedia there, not AI. Basically, looking back at it, 20 years have passed since we were in Northrend. Certainly, the Vrykul could have built up some stuff. Some interesting things could have happened that have changed the land since we were last there. That doesn't just necessarily mean like, oh, some big cataclysmic event has to happen, but just time passage. 20 years of passage over time could have changed these zones, which will be interesting to see.
We know Northrend has changed a bit based on the book, but seeing that they talked about rebuilding Qualtalas, how here they kind of group multiple zones into Qualtalas, it's likely that the same thing will be happening to Northrend as well. We can see multiple areas just becoming one big part with some changes. Other than the new map that we'll discuss in a bit that was data mined a couple of weeks back in 12.0.7, there is also something interesting going on. So if you watched the previous video, there is a leak that has some legitimacy to it going around about how we might fight Azeroth, that the Titans might successfully convert her and will turn her into our enemy. Regardless if that happens or not, we know for certain that the Titans will be returning to Northrend. That is a confirmed, and that is a big event that will happen. Either the awakening of our world soul as a Titan servant, or just the Titans crash landing into Northrend. Both events should cause some very big changes to Northrend in general. At this point, it is highly likely that Northrend will face a significant structural change. Personally, I don't think it is crazy at all, as
And we know Northrend's important, obviously, in Shadowlands. We saw the conduit or whatever, the beam of shit coming down on Icecrown Citadel. Clearly a direct connection to the World Soul. That's why Zoval was using Icecrown. It's also a connection to the afterlife. All this other stuff was going on then. And then all the Titan facilities just scattered across Northrend. Northrend clearly has a big connection to the Titans and to the World Soul. And so that's why it makes sense that we're going back
that
there.
original whiteboard map, because that one is missing like half the zones. But if the map was real, it could be possible that the map was like some early version of what they were originally planning. The very interesting thing though is this very strange map that people have recently discovered that I personally find very puzzling, because on one side it looks like a huge hint, on the other it just kind of doesn't make all that much sense. So let me show you what we got going on. So in 12.0.7 we discovered this really mysterious map for the Sporefall raid. So the Sporefall raid seemingly has nothing to do with Northrend or the Last Titan. It's literally just a Harandar raid where we fight this fungal giant. Sure, Harandar is technically connected to all of Azeroth, so I could see something maybe going on there, but there is really no concrete evidence of this being related to anything. Now, the interesting thing though, this giant map was discovered and the actual raid is like a tiny little square in the right corner of the map. So the Sporefall raid is like less than 10% of the screen, and instead there is this one giant map of this broken landmass of a bunch of rivers, deltas and such. Now,
I wonder if this was supposed to be part of the War Within, because we know that Rootlands part of the War Within was supposed to happen and never did, and then they kind of just brought a little bit of it into this expansion. So maybe this was part of the Rootlands zone that was supposed to happen in the War Within that never did. I don't know where the hell this map came from, but I haven't seen it before.
Landmass of a bunch of rivers, deltas and such. Now, here is where it gets interesting. So on this map that literally looks like flooded, like it was shattered and flooded, we discovered multiple sunken assets. Most importantly, Wrath of the Lich King Alliance sunken assets. We see like the walls and towers under the sea, with only a keep kind of halfway under the sea alongside Wrath of the Lich King assets. So I gotta say, this seems like the most random hint ever, but at the same time, I feel like it is just kinda too much of a coincidence. On one hand, why would they put these Last Titan hints in a random raid in 12.0.7 that has literally nothing to do with Northrend Titans or whatever else is going on? On the other hand, the use of Wrath of Lich King assets, in my opinion, is just incredibly suspicious. I mean, if they wanted to show Alliance assets under the ground, why would they use Wrath assets? For the Alliance, we had gotten so many more updated models of all the buildings, all the way from Warlords of Draenor up to Midnight. There's so many more relevant assets they could use, but here it kind of...
I mean, in a revamp of Northrend, I expect this to happen, like all the buildings to kind of get swapped out for a lot of the newer asset stuff, like what we're seeing here on the screen. I think that'll definitely happen, especially like the landing spot where we land in Howling Fjord and all that other, all those other zones and everything. And then I really would love to see a new iteration on Vrykul assets. Like just them building up more, maybe their little cities become a little bit bigger. I've talked about where's the hub going to be, and I've basically beaten this to death, but I would love to see a Vrykul capital city. And obviously playable Vrykul come with that too. I mean, we're having an Amani patch now. We're never going to get playable Amani, it looks like. So I don't know if we'll ever get playable Vrykul, but it would be cool. It would be cool, and I think there's a lot they could do with the Viking aesthetic that hasn't been done yet in the game. So that's why I'm into the whole Vrykul aesthetic.
Looks like Valiant's keep is being under the water. This got the community to speculate that this could potentially be like a leftover zone from development, some hidden future content that was buried in this random raid map from Midnight, which is obviously a bit weird, but we do discover similar things. I mean, not the same map, but Rootlands was something that was discovered like ages ago that ended up being Harandar all the way in Midnight. Furthermore, you gotta keep in mind that...
Not pre-watched. I just knew about Rootlands. Okay, everybody just calm down, because I know all of you got your pre-watch boners up right now. You're all, oh my god, he mentioned Rootlands before him. This must be pre-watched. No, it's just, that's where my mind went, because I know with these developments and stuff, Blizzard's done this before where they make a very big zone, but then they decide to only use a portion of it later on for whatever reason. But the entire zone gets uploaded into the game, and then they like block it off so you can't go to certain areas in it. And those areas still exist. We've seen it in Azeroth. There's entire zones on the map that exist in the map, but you can never get to them. They're surrounded by mountains and shit, and it's always been blocked off to players. So that kind of stuff's happened before. It happens in game development. So it wouldn't surprise me if they uploaded this raid, but this raid is actually just a tiny part of an entire zone that was supposed to eventually be in the game and never was.
The saga itself is really just one big expansion, like split into 3, so it's all related. I mean, the Rootlands of the Void Within ended up being midnight content, a lot of Beledar stuff and Kazagar was left over, and it looks like that is highly likely that it is all going to happen in midnight and now in 12.2. So it does make sense that some midnight content foreshadows what is going to happen in the last Titan. Actually, Sunken Valley and Keep makes quite a bit of sense. I mean, the keep itself is all the way on the shore. It's technically a port city. If some tectonic changes happen in Northrend, this would be like the first place to sink. By the way, the story is currently set up. Some change to Northrend, as I said, is obviously certain. I mean, whether it is as crazy as the whiteboard map suggests, obviously that's up for debate. Personally, I don't think Blizzard is going to go absolutely crazy and like completely like rebuild Northrend from scratch, but I am expecting something akin to like certain cataclysm type changes. We can still keep the same zones, but like half of Icecrown could be broken up or all Dual can be raised from the ground. Like certain zones could definitely be shattered. What also makes sense is that
you could shatter it a little bit, but I'm really hoping for a Midnight style revamp. I think what Midnight did and how they, they changed some of the zones, the Dead Scar's been healed, all that stuff. So those changes have happened. But first of all, it makes sense for the story. And second of all, the zones are still very much the way they were. They're still very recognizable. They're bigger. The Amani zones and all that are much bigger than they were in the original stuff. But it all looks, I don't know, it just looks right. They did a great job with it. And I hope that's what they do with Northrend.
they're going to be destroying our faction bases that we've had back in Brad. It just thematically makes sense, even though I think it would be cool to go back to like Warsaw Hold again, like when you fly in on a Zeppelin. We still don't know what the new capital could be once we go to Northrend. Some most likely options are like Wyrmrest Temple, just significantly expanded, or us potentially taking over the Icecrown Citadel and just using the Citadel as one big capital, which I think would be a very popular option. But in order to do that, Blizzard would have to kind of deal with the factions.
I still like Icecrown being a little bit threatening, you know, and ominous. I don't know if I want to be just living in Icecrown. I feel like that pretty much, you know, removes the balls of Icecrown, basically. There's nothing scary about it anymore if it's our hub city. So I think, like I said, give me a very cool city. I think that would be a really cool hub.
Specific bases that we've had from Vrad. The book already kind of set this up as they confirm that some of these are completely abandoned, some just have like skeleton crews, but none have been particularly active since we left in Vrad. It's not like we go to Northrend and we got like this crazy presence back from Vrad. That's just kind of the gameplay side of things. I mean, even during the Cataclysm novel, when Garrosh returned from Northrend, we know a significant part of our resources were already sent away from Northrend. Since then, it's been a while, and Northrend has been confirmed to be a very dangerous place post-Shadowlands, so our presence has definitely been minimal, so it will make sense that we could get rid of our bases in this like half-Cataclysm event. As I said, don't expect that we're going to get like a full shattering that's going to turn Northrend into like Outland, but something like the Barrens I think is very likely. Like Barrens was still Barrens post-Cataclysm, but it was different, like new models, some big changes, but still kind of the same concept. I think this type of content is coming for Northrend in the last Titan. Thanks for watching. Check out my video on how we could be fighting Azeroth as the Titans finally awaken her by clicking on the screen, and also subscribe to my brand new Witcher Lore channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
Yeah, so I like, as far as Northrend goes, it's a touchy subject because, you know, and Ian Hazzikostas mentioned this when they did the Midnight revamps, right? When they were changing these zones and kind of redoing them and redoing Silvermoon, they were looking for player feedback once the expansion went live because they were worried about it. Because they know Cataclysm's revamps were not taken well by the player base. A lot of people just didn't like what Cataclysm did to the game. How many zones got changed and completely wrecked and forever, you know, altered from what they originally were. And it wasn't in the best way. Some of the zones honestly became untraversable. It became very annoying to go to some of those zones. So when they did the Midnight revamps, they took a different approach. And I think it was the right one. I think the Midnight zones are beautiful. Upper half of Eastern Kingdoms now is probably one of the best areas in the entire world. Silvermoon's great. So if they take that same game philosophy, which I think they will, and use it on the Northrend revamps, I think we could see an amazing looking Northrend. I'm excited to see where the stories go. As I mentioned before, 20 years have basically passed since we were last in Northrend, so those changes alone could happen. And we'll see if Blizzard can pull it off, but it should be an interesting one to see as we go towards the last Titan. Nice video overall from Thorin.